Hi, I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning. This is Jonathan Small, host and producer of All About You. This program is broadcast every single week at AccessTV.org studios in downtown Hartford. And this show is designed to give the guests a chance to give their life story. This morning, I have a guest who has a tremendous life story. She is a person that I think would have a lot to offer to people throughout the world. She has recently won an award as a CNN hero. This morning, my guest is the president, founder, and CEO of the Ebony Horsewomen in Hartford, Pat Kelly. Good morning, Pat. How you doing?
Good morning.
Okay. Could you kind of let people know exactly where you were born and raised, Pat?
Yeah, I was born raised right here in Hartford, Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first street was Warren Street. I just passed that street the other day, and I thought, wow, I was born there. But yeah, here in Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay. Now, what was it like when you was growing up here in Hartford?
Well, let's see. Well, it was the days when you got dressed up to go downtown with your white gloves on and whatnot. When we moved from Warren Street, we moved to Main Street. I was still very, very young. And then I think we moved to Clark Street. And that's where I remember being raised from, is Clark Street.
Mm-hmm.
Attended Northeast Junior High School, Brackett Elementary School first. That's now no longer in existence. And then Northeast Junior High School, which is no longer in existence.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there to Weaver High School, and graduated from Weaver High School.
Okay.
Yeah, it was quite a different place, Hartford, then. There was no North Hartford. It was just Hartford.
Do you mind me asking which particular era or decade that
Sure
you grew
I
up
do.
in? Okay, you do.
Sure I do.
Right.
A while ago.
A while ago, okay.
Yeah. No, it was early 50s, being raised on Clark Street. Yeah.
Well, I mean, was you involved in a lot of activities here in the
Yeah,
city?
man. We marched, in the
marched.
60s. It was it was a North End Community Action Group that formed to march against racism here in Hartford, if you can believe it.
Okay.
I think it was started by Etna Negrone was part of it, but it was a lot of Trinity College students that came, and they actually formed on Clark Street in a vacant building, and we marched on. It used to be was it Thomas Cadillac? Some Cadillac on the corner down Daniel's Cadillac, maybe
Daniel's
it was. Albany Avenue. It was University of Hartford is there now. So we marched on that. We marched on Woolworths. That was downtown Hartford.
Mm-hmm.
Where else? Oh, the Ranch House.
Mm-hmm.
That is that place just as before you get to Wilson, Connecticut. Wilson, right over the line.
Wilson
Main
Town
Street.
Line, right.
Yeah. And so we did some protesting and marching there during the 60s. There was a lot of little stuff going on then. We were conscious about racism here.
Now, what was the protesting really designed or all about during that particular period of time?
Equal rights.
Equal rights? Okay.
Equal rights. Let us shop. Let us eat where we want to eat. The same kind of stuff that was being experienced over other parts of the country. Mm-hmm. It happened here in Hartford.
Mm-hmm. Well, you still in Hartford when Martin Luther King Jr. got assassinated?
Let's see. Was I in the Marine Corps then? That was 68.
68.
I was home. Yes, I was home then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was home. And riots broke out as a result of that. I was working for Travelers. It was so funny because there was a barricade put up between downtown and the other parts of Main Street. And I think it happened at the clock tower. And I remember my supervisor running to me and saying, "Oh my God, they're rioting. How are you going to ever get home?" I said, "I'll get home, trust me. I'll be all right."
Right.
You, I don't think, but I'll be fine. So yeah, I was home then.
Well, if I stand corrected, I don't know if this riot came after 68, but in 69, Hartford was going through a tremendous turmoil, so bad that I believe Doc Hurley had to gather people at, I guess it was the old Weaver High School, to try to let the young people know that this is not the answer. Was you still in Hartford at that particular time?
I was, and it wasn't just Doc. It was a very prominent minister at that time, Herbert Smith.
Okay.
Who also helped with that process. So it was a couple of years. It was several years, but it had been boiling for a while. And I think the death of Dr. King kind of made it overflow into this ruptured, experience that we did go through. So yeah, it did happen.
Now you mentioned you went to the Marines. Was that again before 68 or after 68? Because you said that
I went to the Marine Corps right after high school.
Right after high school, okay. Right. What made you decide to join the Marine Corps?
Well, it was a couple of reasons. One, back in those days, there weren't as many scholarships and grants to go to college. And so if you didn't have the money, you didn't go. And my parents didn't have the money. So I knew that if I went to the service, I would get the GI Bill. And then I could fund my own college experience. And that was one reason. The other reason was because I grew up in a family with a strong mother figure. And I always wondered if I had any juice myself.
Right.
And so, and my father was kind of like the silent, quiet guy who just brought the bacon home and that kind of stuff. But it was Mama that really ruled the roost. And I always wondered, do I have anything outside of her strength? I could have went to the Army or the Navy or the Air Force, but I didn't think that they would challenge me enough to let me know whether or not I had some juice. Okay. So I picked the Marine Corps, and again, that and getting the GI Bill is why I went.
Now, what did you do after you left the Marine Corps? Did you come back home to Hartford, or did you go someplace else?
Well, no, I did come back home. Yes, I did come back home to Hartford, and like everybody during those days, you get married, you have children, and you settle into a life. Yeah.
Now, you are president and CEO of the Ebony Horsewomen,
right?
Which means you have some type of love for horses. Is that fair to say, or something in the nature that you seem to have a love for?
Well, you have to have a love for horses. And I had that love. I started riding when I was 9. And so I've always had a passion for horses. They are majestic, beautiful creatures, very sensitive. And the method by which we operate with them, that we bond with them and work with them, helps humans, and particularly children in our case with Ebony Horsewomen, heal themselves. So yeah, you're correct. I love horses.
Well, did you see a lot of horses growing up in Hartford? Okay.
Well, let's realize that Hartford was an agricultural place, believe it or not.
Okay.
Even the laws today say that you can have livestock in the city, which is how we were able. I remember that on the very location that I am right now.
Yes.
There used to be sheep there, and a caretaker's house to for the guy who took care of the sheep. So Hartford was always agricultural. We moved. I remember even the late Ella Cromwell in the back of her house on Vine Street right now are beautiful carriage houses, which is where they house carriages for horse and carriage rides. Beautiful, beautiful stable for the carriages. So Hartford, yes, has always been an agricultural town. And where I grew up on Clark Street, I lived right next door to a Jewish grocer that had a horse and wagon and would deliver groceries throughout the community with this horse and wagon. And if you ask me when I was born one more time, we're going to have problems.
All right.
But suffice it to say that he would deliver, you know, groceries through the community with this horse and wagon. And so when he would come in and untack this horse, I was there to help him. And it was almost like a marriage made in heaven, because I bonded immediately with this horse at the age of 9.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you find yourself unique to this type of love for horses, or did all of your friends or most of your friends?
No, I was the weird kid.
The weird kid?
Yeah,
okay.
I was the weird kid, yeah. Everybody's playing double dutch and hopscotch and jacks, and I was brushing horses and riding horses. Although I was a pretty tough, weird kid, so I didn't get any flack. Okay. But it was, I was outside of the norm. But everybody kind of understood, and in those days, I guess there were some bullying going on, but not a lot like you got going on right now. So it was okay to be a little weird.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did you see this type of vision that you would have for horses turning into something, you know, bigger as you got older?
No. And I always say, you know, God got jokes.
Yeah.
I can see, you know, when I look back and see how this all progressed, I could see him orchestrating this when I was young.
Okay.
And allowing me to have various experiences as I got older to mold me into the person who could do this. And to develop this passion and understanding so that I could do this. So I didn't see it myself, but I know now it was in his design all along.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, officially, you started the Ebony Horsewomen in 1984, which is about 30 years ago.
Yes.
And
that's correct. Yeah. Actually, and that came about as a surprise to me too, because when I got back from the Corps, and, you know, married children and all of that, I had a bucket list, and my bucket list was to ride again. And at that point, the Ebony Horsemen were still around, but in their final phases. Many guys had already sold their horses and had got out of the club, if you will. But Pudd'nhead Merritt still had horses on his property in Glastonbury. So I approached him. He had a liquor store on Albany Avenue, and I approached him and I said, "Hey, Pudd'nhead, you know, I want to get back into riding again. I know you still have horses, and I want to, you know, I've been doing it, but I don't know if I've been doing it correctly. I want you to teach me how to do it right." And he said, "Okay," you know, he's like, "Pat, you know, you're giving me a headache here." So on Saturdays I would go out with my youngest daughter. And he began to, you know, take me through the process, and I found such an incredible peace riding these horses. So after like 3 or 4 times going out to his house, I called some girlfriends and said, "Listen, you gotta come try this. It's really, really nice. You're at peace. You're not worried about anything." And they were like, "I'm not messing around with those stinking horses. I just got my hair done." I threatened a couple of them, and they came out and found the same peace that I got out of it. And so 4 months, 5 months later, there's a bunch of women at Pudd'nhead's house every Saturday. Now it's good. We bring groceries and we're cooking and riding his horses and eating and having a good time. And about 6 months, maybe 8 months in, we're sitting on his living room floor. Now, mind you, Pudd'nhead is now wanting us to get out of his house. And we're like, we're going to give you something to eat. Shut up. I found that Ebony Horsewomen on his living room floor, and then we were off and running from there. And then he put us out.
Okay, he put you out after.
Yeah, he put us out. Y'all got to go. It's about 10 of us at that point. Y'all got to get out of my house. All right.
Now, Pat, when you started the Ebony Horsewomen in 1984, was it something that was kind of unique to the city of Hartford to bring this type of horsewoman?
Well, yes and no. You got to remember that the Ebony Horsemen had been around, and they were a pretty significant presence in the community. Pretty significant. Black women on horses now was an oddity, not only in Hartford, but in Connecticut, because, you know, typically coming up through the 50s, you can see Roy Rogers, Hopalong Cassidy, Gene Autry, men, white men, but men on horses. And now we had gotten used to seeing black men on horses, but women, it was really kind of different. Yeah.
Right. Now, when you designed this Ebony Horsewoman, you work with boys and girls?
No, when we first started off, it wasn't with children at all.
Okay.
It was a women's organization, because back in those days, early 80s, remember there's no malls. And so for African American women in the inner city, what did we have to do? Well, we could go to the movies, we could go to church.
Yes.
And we can go to the grocery store. And so we were kind of limited in our, you know, spans of what we could do. Riding horses was like, wow, you know, you're really out of the box with that. So it was a women's organization. And it was about 10 of us at that time. We were all working full time, many of us with children, many divorced, trying not to have nervous breakdowns. And this horseback riding for us was a healing process for us, because it's very stressful, you know, managing a family and working full time too. And so on our off time, you know, the riding of the horses gave us some serenity, some peace, and exercise.
Yes. At
the same time. So it was beautiful for us. But it wasn't until we were riding, this one particular day, we were riding down Albany Avenue and into Westbrook Village, which is a housing project at the end of Albany Avenue as you head up into West Hartford. And we were there just letting the horses just run loose. I mean, it was wind in the hair kind of thing.
Okay.
And these two little boys ran up to us and said, "Hey lady, is that a horse, a real horse?" And I said, "Yeah, baby, what'd you think it was?" He said, "See, I told you, that's a horse." I thought, oh my God, these kids don't understand, you know, animals. So I went to the late John Wardlaw, who at that time was executive director of the Hartford Housing Authority, and said, "John," and I worked for him in the 70s, and I said, "John, listen, I want to bring horses out to the housing projects. Do you have a problem?" He said, "No." So I mustered together a group of people. One was Jackie Bryant was one. She was a social worker at the time. Catherine Jenkins, who is now passed, she was an educator, and a doctor who was in the area, Gerald Pierre, a black guy, to come with me as we brought these horses to the housing project. So I developed a program called Project Horse Sense. And it was, at that time, it was the height of the heroin epidemic here in Hartford. It was very, very bad.
Okay.
And so the mantra was say no to drugs, you know, stay in school. So we would bring horses in a grill. And we would, of course, once we unloaded the horses, which we had to clean the needles out of the grass before we could do that. It was that bad.
That bad, yeah.
All the kids would just flock from everywhere once we brought the horses out. And so parents would come out and, you know, be inquisitive about what was going on. And so the professionals would talk about say no to drugs and resources to get help for whatever they needed, educational or economic. And we would give pony rides to the kids. And so it was a good beginning to introduce children to horses, but also the community to the kind of service and help that we could bring through horses.
Well, Pat Kelly, we're up on our break. Let's take a break and come back with part 2 of this particular conversation with your vision that you have for the Ebony Horsewomen.
Okay.
This is Jonathan Small. I'm hosting All About You this morning with my guest, the president and CEO and the founder of the Ebony Horsewomen, Pat Kelly. And we will be right back very shortly. Thank you. Welcome back. This is Jonathan Small hosting All About You this morning with my guest, the president and CEO of the Ebony Horsewomen, Pat Kelly. Pat, I kind of want to get into your visions with the Ebony Horsewomen, and I realized a few years ago that you had some type of plan that you wanted to implement with equestrian center that would have been built in the north end of Hartford.
Right.
Could you kind of explain what that whole plan was all about?
Yes, there's a legacy behind that plan. When you asked me earlier about what Hartford was like, well, before, I think, long before the riots and whatnot, the African American community lived in a place called the Bottom. And it was down near where CRT is right now, the railroad tracks. And there weren't that many black people that crossed Main Street. Okay, so so all of that was called the Bottom, and down there was everything. I mean, people had grocery stores and housing and funeral parlors and all kinds of businesses, because that's where African Americans lived. When the city at that point came through and wanted that land, everybody was told to get out and that they were going to build new housing. Well, they never did. It was never the plan to build new housing. So that's when African Americans began to cross Main Street. So then they began to come, Mail Avenue and then forward. That brings us up into the early 50s and then late 50s, early 60s. And then when the riots happened, the neighborhood that is now considered the Northeast neighborhood was populated by a lot of Jewish families, some French and Portuguese families. Okay, so the riots happened, and a lot of that population demographics moved to West Hartford and other places. African Americans began to come into the Northeast section of the city. When I went away to the Marine Corps, it was Hartford.
Right.
When I came home from the Marine Corps, Hartford had been dissected. It was North Hartford and then Hartford, which was very confusing to me because I left Hartford. I came back to North Hartford. North Hartford, now being populated by a lot of African Americans, some Latinos, was not getting the same kinds of services, property values as it was previous to the riots. And the neighborhoods began to go down. Housing stock went down. Property values went down. A lot of things began to dissipate. So now we're coming up towards the 70s and 80s, and this decline happens. Kenney Park was the crown jewel prior to the exodus of the first population in the Northeast section of the city. I remember going to Weaver High School when it was predominantly white. Right. And Kenney Park, not Elizabeth Park, not Bushnell, Kenney Park was the crown jewel. Flower shows like you would never, backed up traffic getting into Kenney to see the flower shows. It was quite a different park. Kenney Park now had become a haven for drug dealing and a lot of other kinds of unsavory activity. My children, not my biological so much, but them too, but my children live predominantly in the Northeast section of the city. They are now being affected by the educational system that began to deteriorate, the community situation, economics, all of that. And I wanted this part of the city to be as prominent and as healthy for my children as any other part of the city. My business is in the equine industry. I am aware that the equine industry is $1 billion industry across the United States. And we had an opportunity to bring that economic driver into Hartford very easily, into a park that had been predominantly left.
Yes.
Nothing was in it except my friend Michael Chambers and his cricket organization. Very excellent program. And the golf course. That was all. And I understood that this economic driver, a horse park, the Connecticut, what we call the Connecticut Equestrian and Exhibition Center, would bring not only to that neighborhood, but to Hartford and Connecticut, a significant economic development boost that not only Hartford needed, but Connecticut needed it as well. And in the interim, it would uplift the community, bring better services, jobs, business creations to the Northeast community, and utilize a section of the park that there was nothing in whatsoever. Drive the bad elements out, uplift the community, strengthen the community, and give that community some significance while providing quite a bit of capital in the coffers of the city of Hartford and the state of Connecticut.
Well, Pat, this was about, what, 2010 when you had this plan? Or
no, I worked on this from 2003 to 2008 when it was voted down, finally voted down.
In 2008, it was voted down by the city council?
City council.
Now, why do you think the city council voted down your plan?
I will tell you what was told to me.
Okay.
That it was pretty much unpopular in the communities. However, for the 6 years I worked on it, I had letters of support from all of the community agencies up until the final hour of the voting, when all of them withdrew support, which is a mystery, because it would bring quite a bit of revenue and jobs and increased property values in the neighborhood, which should have been something they would have wanted. So,
well, Pat, do you have some type of examples of another project similar to what you was looking to bring here to Hartford that you can kind of let people know the real benefits of this particular project?
Well, yes, but I don't want you to think that it's another piece of something that has already failed. What has happened over the last several years is that the mental health issues among children have escalated. And we see it in our ERs, our hospitals. It has been in several newspapers and news commentaries about the declining mental health of many of our youngsters that they're facing today. We've known this for a long time. We're certified through the Department of Children and Families as therapeutic clinical providers. We're federal vendors. We work with veterans. So we understood for a long, long time that the problems of emotional and mental health among our young were climbing. And we work with a number of those children. We began to see that the need was not only greater, but it was expanding even more so, faster than we thought. The need to service these children and families and veterans was becoming very, very, very prominent. The facility from which we are now working is not going to be able to hold the capacity that is going to be needed to continue to service at the degree that we are. And so the need for a better and larger facility had been known within our organization for a while, and we began to actively work toward putting together a plan to develop this. And so we did. The board and I began to work on this, and so we developed a business plan for an equine therapeutic center adjacent to where we are right now, that would give us a larger facility and more capability to serve the demographics that are expanding in this area. So we've been working on that, and we've gotten the support of several Connecticut legislators, as well as the city of Hartford. We've met with the mayor, Mayor Segara, and have gained his support for the project, along with the Friends of Keeney Park, to develop this equine therapeutic center. And we're still actively working and putting everything in place. The University of Connecticut, we work very closely with them, is interested in this facility to send their graduate students in to study equine therapy. We have very, very strong mental health staff, licensed therapists, MSWs, and we work also very closely with the University of Connecticut School of Social Work. So all of this is coming together with the support of Connecticut legislators, the City of Hartford, the Friends of Keeney, to make this a reality, to build this project. And in doing so, the facility will have several capabilities, not only to service those families and individuals with needs of this kind, but also to bring some economic development along with it as well. Some other pieces of it will help to bring in other communities into Keeney Park, not necessarily seeking therapeutic help, but we plan to expand our riding academy to the public. So we'd have a public riding academy. We'd also have carriage driving, again, through Keeney Park, that once was part of its legacy to do carriage driving. So it has an economic development piece to it and a therapeutic piece as well. Hopefully it will help to also uplift the community. It will be a place where the community can come and experience a serene atmosphere. So yeah, we're working on that, and we're very hopeful with it.
Well, Pat, it sounds like to me you kept saying the word, uplift, and to attract or bring in more other development projects, because it's desperately needed. You mentioned the north section. People sometimes call it the north end of Hartford.
Correct.
The south end of Hartford is a little bit, of a different type of city. But I think it's kind of a disgrace that we have our city so divided, and the fact that we're a small city geographically, and we got to be so divided between the north end, the south end, and the west end. Like we're trying to keep something away from another part of the city. Now, I don't know if that has something to do with why this equestrian center plan that you had a few years ago didn't take place, but I just think we got to get to the point that we look at ourselves as one whole city. Yes. And it's to the benefit of every city resident.
Exactly. To
have something.
Exactly. And folks in North Hartford pay taxes, and it goes for the entire city of Hartford. So, yes, exactly. We are one city. I think that there had been a mindset that the city was divided, and that you had different things in different parts of the city, but we are one city, and I'm very hopeful that the present administration understands that and is working towards that, and is putting efforts into the north end or northeast community of Hartford, as with any other section. So I'm very confident that what we have now as administration understands that and is working diligently to make that happen.
Now, Pat, I have to obviously get this last piece in about this CNN Hero Award that you was one of the finalists, and now you're up for another finalist. position?
Well, the way it works is that CNN selects 25 across the world to be a CNN hero. So I got that.
Okay.
I'm very thrilled about that. But out of the 25, 10 will be selected to go to, I guess, the next round. And then out of the 10, there will be one selected as the top, I guess, CNN hero. So I've already gotten the CNN hero, waiting to see if I'm going to be selected as the next 10 out of the 25. And then out of that 10, one will be selected.
Well, since you've been already selected for one level of the CNN hero, has that kind of networked you towards other opportunities that you can kind of bring back here to Hartford?
Well, yeah. We had Good Morning America to come in and do a piece on Ebony Horsewomen and our kids, which was an absolute joy for us. We had MSNBC came in and did some taping as well. We've gotten a lot of congratulations from across the country on this. So it is very significant for us. I think more importantly is that more than just Hartford knows about the work that we do with children and horses, but we're bringing, I guess, a greater light to how horses can heal a lot of people. So we're very happy about that.
Okay. Well, let's leave it on a positive note that, you feel very happy that, the notoriety is starting to come towards the Ebony Horsewoman and yourself. And I definitely wish you the best of luck of being the #1 select
Well,
finalist.
thank you.
And
Thank you.
I'd enjoyed having you on my program this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay, this is Jonathan Small. I had enjoyed hosting All About You this morning with my guests, President and CEO and founder of the Ebony Horsewomen, Pat Kelly. And actually today was my 2nd year anniversary. I did this show technically 2 years ago, September the 10th, 2012, and 2 years have just flown by. And this network is one of the best networks, I think, throughout the country. And there's a lot of good programs you can always tune into on accesstv.org. And as I always say every single week to people out there, have a very blessed day and keep the faith. Thank you.